Oh, happy Monday. I'm still here in bed, nursing a busted tibia. This is COFOH Live Undead. I am your host, Daniel Crosier, and I am joined by the amazing Vince D'Amato of Darkside releasing. Oh, man. You have something on my face? Vince, how are you?
I'm amazing. I'm amazing. Thank you. And thank you for having me on your show. That was definitely an exciting intro. So that was fantastic.
Thanks. As time progresses, my energy level is kind of grown. Stuck on this belt, with limited movements. But yeah, it's great to connect to you and to be able to chat with you today. Vince, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, how you got into film and film distribution.
Yeah. Actually, my wife, Nikki, and I, we started as a production company back in the early 2000s. And the first couple films we did, we were actually working with the Asylum that put out the Mockbuster. So they put out our first two films. Brain Damage then put out our third film. And from there, we inadvertently kind of just took a break from doing producing with distribution with other companies. And this would have been around maybe, so when we first started working with the Asylum, that was about 2003, 2004. They did really well with our first film, Vampires versus Zombies, which was actually their title. They named it that. When we sent it to them, it was called Carmilla, and they changed the title. But to their credit, I mean, that really helped the film out a lot, even though there were no vampires fighting zombies in the movie. So of course that pissed everybody off. But I have to give them credit that they actually, I mean, they really did well for the film because of that name change. And honestly, they thought of that. At that point, the only name or the only film that had the name Versus in it had been Freddy versus Jason. And now, of course, you get everything under the sun. It's got this versus this and this versus that. But actually, like, it had only been, at that time, it had only been Freddy versus Jason. The Asylum actually kind of thought, well, let's see what we can do with that. And that was them, actually. They really did that. They were geniuses, honestly. I'm not surprised they're still around and doing well on Netflix and all that, because they're really smart. But so anyway, so after that, the reason we ended up only working with them for a couple of films was actually because they got into doing their own productions. So they were at some point, I think in 2007, they decided they weren't going to actually take on any outside acquisitions anymore. So that left us to kind of go with other people after the fact. So we worked with Unearthed Films and Brain Damage Films, and then after that we took a little while, and we were still producing films, but we didn't really know where we could find a home for these things, because the distribution companies that we worked with were sort of going in different, like in case of Brain Damage Films, they were sort of going in a different direction. In the case of the Asylum, they weren't even bringing on outside acquisitions anymore. So we were still producing films, but where are we going to release these things? We didn't know. So for a few years, we went the film festival route. And actually, coming back to the Asylum, I think it was 2017, actually the Asylum really provided the inspiration for us to start our own distribution company. And so we started it, and the only films we had were our own films. But thankfully, we had 7 of those guys. So we had 7 of our own films. And then we just kind of begged a few friends, like, hey, you've got a film. Can you let us handle them for a couple of international markets, just to build up? And it kind of went from there. It was quite an organic process, honestly. So it just came from that. We decided that maybe we should move in that direction. And the only negative thing that happened from that is I have no time to produce movies anymore, which is something I really love to do. But that being said, I mean, the movies that we bring on now are really amazing. I mean, we're able to distribute films for producers that are like super talented, and I mean, of course, there's always, even since we started, there's been a market for fans that really connect with and really actually in a lot of cases prefer to go to the independent films for their genre fixes. And so we're super happy to be able to provide fans for that, especially as, you know, I mean, we've got some amazing films on now, like Brides of Satan and I Scream on the Beach. You know, we work with this company in the UK called Trash Arts, and they've got, they've got one of my favorite titles. We started distributing it a couple of years ago called Lonely Hearts, and now I believe we're about to deliver their 6th film with us. I mean, they've actually done more films than that, but their 6th film with us is coming out soon. So it's been a fantastic journey, to be honest. Like, really, nice. We've really been enjoying it, honestly.
That's so cool. Well, you being a filmmaker, you know what filmmakers are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the types of markets and platforms that are available for people to see independent films is vastly different than it was in 2003 and 2004 when we started out. I think the key is just to kind of really try to keep on your toes with that, and honestly to get it out, but without doing it in a way that sacrifices the amount of royalties a filmmaker can get. You know, that's really ultimately that's the juggling act we're constantly doing. That's our job, you know. And because we don't want to put a film out there just because a filmmaker wants it out there and available, if it's only going to be available on platforms that aren't going to generate royalties for them. We do have to be careful of that. So it is a bit of balance, because also you don't want to only go for platforms that, okay, well, these guys, they pay this, they pay that. But at the same time, I mean, if the film isn't going to be seen by a lot of people, that's no good either. So there is a real huge balancing act when it comes to that. And that's really like the majority of the job is doing that, honestly.
Yeah, well, on top of platforms, I mean, you're looking at different regions and territories. What caters to certain demographics and stuff as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was more valid maybe 5 years ago, honestly. Like it seems that those types of things, like it's almost impossible to guess now what a territory outside of North America is going to go for, because even year to year, even at sometimes market to market, it's like, oh yeah, but you said last market you wanted these types of films, and now you don't want these types of films anymore at all. You want these types of films. So we've kind of taken the stance as well, then you know what, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to bring on films that we like. We're going to sell the films that we like to see, because we actually think that, well, if we like them and we like to see these films, there are going to be other people that like to see them as well.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Working on and developing and distributing the films that you yourself enjoy. Of course, there's got to be other people out there that like the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
community of them.
That's exactly right. And I think that, I mean, we've been part of that community for forever. So really it wasn't even a strategic decision. It's just the way we've always been. Like, well, if we like it, then somebody else is going to like it too. You know, we really just base it on that. You know, the other thing, it sort of comes down to, do you remember that show that Gene Simmons' family did called Family Jewels a long time ago? Yeah. So there was an episode where he said, you know, he was talking about selling things, you know, and he said, well, you have to believe in that thing that you're selling. And that's why we don't veer into other genres that, or even for that matter, other films that we can't fall in love with, you know, because if we're not in love with it, how are we going to sell it to somebody else? Honestly, you know,
you're in that position to champion these films.
Exactly.
Passionate about it.
So we are selective with those things. So far that seems to have worked, you know, and at this point in time, like in this point in the market, it's really about a game of patience, honestly. Like maybe a film won't hit right away, but that's the beautiful thing about these genre films, is that sometimes it just takes a little while for it to catch on. You know, that's the thing too. And that's another thing I really love about it, because all of a sudden you turn around and it's like, oh, we've had this film for 2 years or what have you. And then it's going gangbusters 2 years later, where you're thinking, oh, you know, I thought that was going to go really well 2 years ago, but that's fine. You know, it's fine. It's going well now. That's no problem. You know, I'll take it.
Yeah, to a point too. I think that you know, that also speaks to its longevity. Even if it doesn't take off right away, you know, it might not hit because it might be ahead of its time. You know, and it takes time to kind of gravitate towards its audience and bring it in.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things I love about the genre in general. I actually really do believe that the horror genre specifically, it inherently has that longevity, because the film is always about more things than it just being a horror movie. Always, you know, and it's really interesting. You know, I just watched something that came up. I just watched this movie called Underwater with the Kristen Stewart stars in it. And to me, when I watched it, it was basically a remake of From Beyond, you know, the Stuart Gordon film. And From Beyond took place in a house. Their thing took place underwater. But honestly, like, to me, it seemed that same thing. And I think that's what's really interesting about that, is you can get those types of themes, whether it be like genre specific or a little bit more existential. And they do have in the horror genre, they do have that longevity, which is something that's always attracted me to the genre.
Yeah, that's something that recently I've come to realize. Like, you see all these amazing, like, independent, say, you know, films that you know, are fantastic dramas and art pieces, and then, you know, once they run their course, they're kind of forgotten. But when it comes to, like, you know, horror, indie horror, you know, those type of genre films, you know, they seem to have a life, you know, that's just completely ongoing. It might take a little bit, but man, once it gets going, it becomes, you know, part ingrained with the culture.
Absolutely. You know, and I think it doesn't matter that now the culture of society is completely, you know, online and social media. You can still go back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and relate to that film, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that is my favorite horror movie of all time, and it's still
amazing.
Yeah, that's still one that I can watch and have nightmares about. And you know, one of my takeaways has always been it was done in a way it felt like a documentary style, and there was no gore, but it was so visceral. It got under your skin. So yeah, you know, you mentioned Brides of Satan, you know, earlier in the broadcast, and I mentioned to you before we went live. It's like, I got to check that out. I've been following it on Instagram, I think, as it was developing, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of vibrant colors and you know,
absolutely.
It felt like it had echoes of like, Kill Bill, which is also is an homage to, so many of
That's right. Yes.
films,
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was really nice to see that that type of tradition, was ongoing. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the other thing too is and this is something I don't think you get a lot. Sometimes I'll give you that. Sometimes you get it, but not a lot in mainstream horror cinema, where I think independent horror cinema really embraces the idea of transgressive cinema. You know,
Mm.
they embrace the idea of transgression, and even if they're making it something a little bit more towards something modern, more towards what they want to say now, as opposed to what maybe they would have wanted to have said in the 90s or even 80s if they'd been around. But to do it in a matter, and I think that's really important for genre film and for genre film fans, because as an audience we actually kind of crave those hooks to be able to dig into a film. Do you know what I mean? If transgression all of a sudden became a taboo thing to do in cinema, honestly, I think that would ruin the horror genre, and to a certain degree the erotic genre as well. We want those things as an audience. We expect those things, and it's about taking those expectations and then moving the transgressive part of the cinema into maybe something a little bit more modern, which French filmmakers tried to do in the early 2000s. I mean, there was some great transgressive genre cinema that came out of the early 2000s. I mean, it gave Gaspar Noé his whole career. He got a complete career out of doing that, and a very high profile career. It was not an independent career. And so I do think these things are important, to a certain degree. Jonathan Glazer does that as well. He did Under the Skin, things like that. Right. But I mean, Sexy Beast was sort of a little transgressive as well, a little bit, but not. It didn't ruffle too many feathers, but there was a little bit in there for genre fans, and I think that's. I do think that's important for the genre. And the other exciting thing about working with indie filmmakers and indie genre filmmakers is that they're not afraid to go there, which again, like I said, not only do I like as a fan, but I actually believe it's important,
Yeah. With that too, like, you're looking at the logistics of an independent film production, budget is always a thing, budget and resources. And so many, people, it's like, oh, it can be hindering. And yeah, it can be. But at the same time, it's like, ooh, but those limitations can breed innovation.
100%. I totally agree with you. I have nothing to argue with you about that sentiment. I always thought that. I always thought that constrictions breed creativity. Honestly, and realistically, like as a distributor, one thing we don't do, and I know other distributors do it, and I'm not knocking them. It's just the way people work sometimes. Right. But we have never in our life asked a filmmaker how much a movie cost. It just we kind of take it at face value, and whatever it looks like, we know basically how to be able to categorize that for distribution sales and things like that. But we've never actually asked, because at the end of the day, does it really matter? Like, does it matter if you are out of pocket $5 or $50,000? Really, no. I mean, like, we just look at the type of film you made from your $5 or $50,000 or $500,000, and that'll give us an idea of where we might be able to sell that for people. So yeah,
that's pretty cool. The looks like we've got some people starting to chime in.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I'll take the lead on that and let me know what I need to do here.
Yeah, Martin just chimed in. Filmmakers make films that they want to see. So why not have distributors distribute films that they want to see? Yeah, it makes absolute sense. So it sounds like he's agreeing with you on that sentiment. And then I think he It's a shame. It's a shame that Vince doesn't produce his own anymore. But a great filmmaker. He is a filmmaker, but great he is a filmmaker. Ethos with a distributor.
I understand.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And honestly, I think that was really important for us when we started the distribution company as well, because we had started in the industry as producers working with other distribution companies. I have to tell you this, because I know this is not the story with a lot of people, but our story is that we actually had a very positive experience with our distribution partners back when we were producing films. We had to trust them. We had to let them do their thing with it. And honestly, I believe that we lucked out, so to speak. The distributors that at the time, Asylum, Brain Damage Films, that we had worked with, they treated us nicely. And so to the point where when we started building our distribution company, we actually went back to the contracts we had with them and kind of based the contracts that we have now with film producers. We're sort of based on the contracts we had with these guys back, in the early 2000s, because we thought, well, you know what, like we made money with them, and this was how they had constructed. Obviously, they're not out of business, so it was a business model that clearly worked for them, which kind of went around to another aspect of the inspiration, say, from the Asylum of starting the distribution company. Honestly, like I mean, I have to say, a little bit as an outside influence, Trauma was an inspiration as a distribution company, and Roger Corman's companies have been inspirations as distribution companies, and something that we've looked at and said, it'd be great to be like them and have that following that they have. But actually, when it comes to hands-on, and we've actually worked with these people, one of the top 3 inspirations, like I'd say Roger Corman's ideas, Lloyd Kaufman and Trauma, but the Asylum is top 3, 100%. Like we worked directly with them, and they were really good to us. And I look at what they're doing now, and it is inspiring. Like they've been in this business now for over 20 years, and now they're producing Netflix series. I mean, they have gone in a different direction, but that's inspiring. Like it's really great to see these guys doing their own in-house productions, and just like I mean, they're almost unstoppable. They're fantastic. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Next to the windows, somebody on a motorcycle was going by. Hopefully it was the Ghost Rider. But yeah, I totally agree. Somebody like Asylum, able to take their business model and pivot, and really do their own things, and keep on going doing that too. Even like with Trauma, they have a streaming service now as well.
Yes, yeah, and honestly, they're a company that didn't give up.
Right.
They started that streaming service 4 or 5 years ago, and only now it's really gaining a lot of traction. And that's the other thing. I mean, like, there's got to be a certain amount of perseverance with what you're doing in order to create that success. You actually can't just try something, and if it doesn't work the first time around, oh, never mind. Okay, that's not going to work. Right. You can take a cue from Trauma and say, okay, you know what? Like, okay, yeah, that took ages to fucking get up and running, like ages. Right. But now it's really getting up and running, and things are now starting to click. You can't give up on those things. Absolutely.
Right. We've got some more people chiming in saying hello. Awesome. Brad saying, what's up? Oh.
Nice.
Here goes Ghost Rider again. Emily says hi.
Hello.
And then Martin just chimed back in. Funding from a major studio would limit independent filmmaking totally. Would have to give the funder what they want. Any filmmakers, filmmaking is about making the films they want to make.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point too. I mean, absolutely face value that it's undeniably 100% true. That statement is 100% true. But I think it also depends on, as a filmmaker, if you're willing to look at maybe what the funder may be requesting of the film as sort of an opportunity again to be creative with it. But again, I don't know. So it depends on who you're working with, and I think at the beginning of any relationship, I think that really the most important part is for a filmmaker to consider, can they collaborate with this person? That's really it, because obviously, of course, you're a filmmaker. You're living. You go peanut butter sandwich to peanut butter sandwich, and then you've got somebody to connect with you and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm actually going to give you $100,000 to do this thing." Very easy to say yes, and then fall into that thing. And if you're not prepared, if you don't ask the right questions, like, "Hey, are you actually willing to be on board and collaborate on this project, or is this something that you kind of want to take on and just make it yourself, like make it the thing that you want it to be, and I'm just like, you're the puppet master pulling my strings, and I'm basically just delivering a product to you." And again, that's not bad either. It's just there needs to be an understanding between that relationship, and I think that's where a lot of people end up falling into trouble, is because there's a bit of a lack of communication and understanding where that relationship is and the purpose of that relationship. Because absolutely, if some funder came over to me and said, "You know what, I need you to take a break from your business for 2 or 3 months. I want you to make this film, and I want it to be like this, and I'm going to give you this amount of money." Well, I need to make that decision. Like, okay, I'm basically making a film for you. And you know what? That's actually okay too, because that gives a filmmaker an opportunity to practice. It gives them an opportunity to maybe insert even a little bit of what they want to say into somebody else's film, ultimately.
Make it more subversive.
Absolutely, 100%. So it ends up being, the filmmaker can still be somewhat in control of that. There's an underground story about Alex Cox when he was shooting Repo Man. And apparently he shot everything. He knew he did not have final cut, so he shot everything in a way where the takes were so truncated that the editor of the studio had no choice but to simply just use the best takes of what he delivered and edit the film basically in the way he wanted it to be.
Nice.
So there's that opportunity for filmmakers, but ultimately my honestly, my philosophy is to be, it's best to get that understanding at the beginning. Life is full of misunderstandings. Even if maybe you think you have that, you might not have that 3 months later, but at least lay that groundwork in where there is that understanding, and you have to be open to receiving a little bit of criticism and even conflict so that you can resolve these issues. Like, not everything is well, fuck, that's not what I agreed to, so screw it. You can't go through life like that. It has to be like, damn, I didn't think it was going to be like this. Well, let's see what we can do to kind of like, okay, compromise and see where we're going with this. Because if you're going to get into a collaboration with somebody who's the one that's paying for you to make that film, you want to make sure you're on the same page before you go too far into it. So basically, what it boils down to is, my advice would be like, don't let those dollar signs kind of be your guiding light with it. You still have to maintain a little bit of intellect and really like human understanding, and see where if somebody's willing to give you a bunch of money to make a film, you need to really, I think you need to go into it thinking, well, they're thinking it's their film, so you do have to go into that like that. So
most definitely. I like the idea of like, define that relationship, what that collaboration looks like, and also like, okay, down the road, what is, what kind of deliverable am I delivering? What's the final product? And then, past that too, the marketing, because
absolutely.
And the returns.
One of my favorite stories was that I heard on the radio one time was Slash, actually, when his old record company put out a greatest hits of the Guns N' Roses stuff.
Okay.
And they were always the type of band that they did not want to do an album like that, but they were missing an album under their contract for their record company, and that was the record company's that was the way to solve it. Like, well, we'll issue out a greatest hits that nobody approved. And Slash was on the radio and he said, but you know what, at the end of the day, I played on all those songs. I played on every record that those songs came off of. So I got to support it. Like, that's me playing on there. I got to support that, and that to me was really a great illustration of a compromise that even came after the fact, after, he didn't want that album coming out, after the record company just put it out anyway. It was about him going back and saying, you know what, like, at the end of the day, that's me playing on there. So, yep. And I stand by what I played on that record, Yeah.
That's cool. The, one thing that comes to mind too, like growing up, Vince, what were your biggest influences?
Honestly, horror. I think, I grew up with movies. I've been going to the movie theater since, honest to God, I was 4 years old. My mom took my first movie in the movie theater was Superman in 1978. Yeah. And honestly, I was so young, I didn't remember a frame of that. the one I do remember that in my mind, the first one I remember in the movie theater was Popeye and then the Blues Brothers. And my godmother took me to see the Blues Brothers, and we were walking around downtown. I grew up in Vancouver. This is all in Vancouver, city of Vancouver.
Nice.
Walking around downtown in Vancouver, we walked by the movie theater, and there's a movie poster of the Blues Brothers, and me and my brother, I was 5, my brother was 3, saying, "Oh, mom, this is our favorite movie of all time." She looked at us and she said, "It is?" yes, our godmother Heather, she took us to see this. So my mom's like, okay. So she took us to go see it again. Nice. And apparently she gave my godmother an earful after, because she was like, "Oh my God, how could you take this?" There's like, F-bombs and shit this and all like through the whole movie. She's like, "How could you take these kids to go see this movie?" But so I had a lot of very early experiences in the cinema that I just adore to this day. But it was really the VHS stuff. And so I really got into VHS. It just so happened between the 4th grade and the 5th grade. At this time, we were living in North Vancouver, and we'd moved from the city of Vancouver into North Vancouver. And North Vancouver, it gets way more rain than the city of Vancouver. Like, we're a little bit further up the mountain. We're in the forest now. We're in the rainforest. So I experienced my first summer that was just torrential downpours, like that was it. And all I did all summer was walk down to the local video store, rent a movie or two, walk back, watch them, and then go back a couple of days later. And I really got to, and also my mom, who freaked out when we went to go see the Blues Brothers, was actually super liberal when it came to video rentals. I would ask her to rent Friday the 13th and Lucio Fulci's Zombie and Maniac and The Thing. And she would seriously rent those for us. So I grew up, so I was a really impressionable age, like it was between 9 and 10, and watching all these movies. The first 2 movies I ever saw on VHS were Jaws and Creepshow. Those are the first 2. And so it just at a very young age, like these types of films really captured my imagination and never let go. And that's why, I find myself where I am today, because really they just hooked into the imagination so intensely that honestly, like I really can't imagine doing anything else, which is a little tricky, because the markets now, the platforms that people see these films on now, are so vastly different from that. So you have to kind of manage the passion for it with the reality of, what, people are not going to the movie theaters to see this anymore. They're not renting VHS tapes of this anymore. They're not even renting DVDs of this anymore. So you need to manage, like I'm talking about myself, I need to manage that reality versus the passion of putting these films out there, and to the benefit of the audience. That like the end goal is we want to get these movies to the audience. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, most definitely. What is it? Kind of whatever form it comes in? Because
oh, you mean like when we acquire the films?
Yeah. It's like when working with filmmakers, are a lot of them looking for like, hey, we want to do theatrical runs. It's
like, well, actually, to be honest, not a lot, and as a matter of fact, we still do some theatrical. There is still that component to it, absolutely. But no, I actually think that the way things have gone the last few years, I think that there really is a very low expectation about doing theatrical. In fact, even there's a company we do some business with, and they said to me on the phone one time, oh, you know what they say now? I said, no, what do they say? DVD is the new theatrical. Oh my God, really? So I guess that means streaming is the new DVD. But honestly, I think that a lot of people that we work with, a lot of producers that we work with, they are also big fans. And as fans of the genre, they know where they need to go to get their movie fix. So there's the expectation that we will supply basically the same thing. Like if they need to get it on DVD, yeah, we supply that, or Blu-ray, yes, we supply that, or online, yes, we supply that. But they don't go to the theater to get their fix anymore. So I think that expectation is sort of vanishing from what from a lot of the distribution. And I'm not going to say that's good nor bad. I think it's just it's just the way things are now. Like really, I think it's just art is being influenced by life now. That's or at least the way you deliver art.
Yeah. There's out there's a nice community of that's reinvesting in something like VHS, kind of like how vinyl's made a comeback and stuff. Is that something that you guys are interested in or looking into?
Actually, absolutely. That's a great question. Couple of the titles that we briefly mentioned, we should be talking about the titles a bit more, I guess. But Brides of Satan, I Scream on the Beach, plus a small handful of other ones. We actually just started working with Culture Shock. We just signed a few films to them to do on VHS. So those films actually will be coming out on VHS soon. We've got the first time we experimented with that. There's a Canadian film called Red Letter Day that we're working with Epic and Dread Presents on, and over the last couple of years. And so we got that one out on VHS. But I mean, it is a super specialized market. It is super niche, like it's niche for VHS. I'm glad it's still around, but I do think that one of the problems is it is very long to manufacture, because you can't press a VHS tape. You have to there are moving parts and magnetic components to a VHS tape. It's like putting a model car together. So there's really no place to mass produce these things anymore.
Right.
You compare it to vinyl, and it's comparable only in spirit, because the fact of the matter is you can press a vinyl record and get it out there. You cannot do that with a VHS tape.
You can't. You cannot. You mentioned your catalog of films too. You did send me some images of some stills of some of the films that. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, kind of chatting a little bit about.
Oh, them. Absolutely, of course,
what you love about them. Let me take off the banner here real quick. But yeah, so we've got Take Back the Knife. This looks like a fun film.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was that would fall into the park of like ultra low budget. This is a filmmaker that really just wanted to make a film and went out and did it. Well, I say a filmmaker. I think, I mean, realistically, there was more than one person involved with it. But one thing we really loved about it was the focus on the female characters, and it actually is fun. It's not extremely heavy with societal or political content. It is fun, but at the same time, it really focuses on and lets all of the female characters take the lead. It's actually really it's a really good time. Actually, it really is. Poltergeist is fantastic. This is one that I mean, I really would love to see a wider audience for this. It's been out. You can find it on Tubi. You can find it. I think it's on Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. But that one, I'm consistently wishing for a bigger audience for that one, because it's actually amazing. So it's basically the story of these two gangsters, if you will, these UK gangsters. They need to find something for they're trying to find it for themselves, but it belonged to a mob boss who is since deceased. So they go to this medium who's pictured up there in the middle with the glasses, and so she tries to make contact, with a spiritual contact with the deceased mob boss, but he ends up taking over her consciousness and basically becomes back in charge. So she, for all intents and purposes, she becomes the mob boss. She's bossing everybody around, and things get pretty violent and gruesome, but in a very comedic way. And it's a movie that's it's actually really well done. We fell in love with this. It was part of a film festival that happened in Vancouver, and that was kind of how we got connected with the film there. But sorry, I talk so much. I don't know if we're about to wrap up, but ask me about any of the other films you want to hear a little bit more about.
Black Forest sounds or looks pretty interesting too.
That honest to God, like, is one of our top two favorite releases, that one. So this at one point, I think it was a Brazilian film reviewer dubbed it the Brazilian Evil Dead, but in a way that doesn't really do it justice. Yes, it's the Brazilian Evil Dead when it comes to gore and humor, but the story is something else altogether. So the story is this poor young woman you actually see in the poster, her face splashed in blood. Well, I mean, she kind of starts the whole story out a little bit meek. Her boyfriend gets into a little bit of trouble, and she tries to fix things using a book of the dead, basically, which unleashes these powers. And so, of course, it's kind of like a monkey's paw situation, where the one good thing she's trying to do using the powers of the book is like the back end of it, like there's this evil thing that happens. And as she gets herself further and further into the shit, she keeps going back to the book to kind of like outdo the good thing that she tried to do. Oh, well, I'll just fix this other bad thing that happened using the book. And it becomes like this crazy, gory comedy of errors in a way. It is actually brilliant. I love it. Actually, that movie is about to come out in France fairly soon. It's already out in Japan. I mean, obviously we've already put it out in North America. Again, you can find you definitely find that on Tubi. I know I keep checking back on that just to make sure it's still on there, but you definitely find that on Tubi. You can find it on a few other platforms. Or I mean, obviously, if any collectors are into Blu-rays, if they go to the Darkside releasing website, they can get the Blu-rays as well, or Amazon.com. They're available on there also.
That's so cool. Brad chimed in. Red Letter Day and on VHS at Video Dead Room for COFOH. So it looks like we're going to be screening some of your films there.
Yes, yeah, that's right too. Actually, audiences will have a chance to check out Brides of Satan there as well.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, I highly recommend that one. That was a lot of fun. And then Martin was saying good to see Tommy There's Day of the Stranger on with the images there too.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah, and then let's see here. And then you send a second set too. Which one really like Seven Sins? Basically, because the color palette really stands out to me.
Oh yes, yeah, that one's an anthology.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Well, I'm going to say every movie we point out, I'm going to say that's a really good one, I guess, but because I like them.
As you should. They're your babies.
But that's an anthology one. That one's a little bit more towards the sexy horror. Actually, as is Lonely Hearts. In fact, Lonely Hearts isn't so much outright horror. And in fact, that Lonely Hearts was one that Martin was involved in as well. That was one of our earliest acquisitions, and still to this day one of my favorites. That one is really great. Like it kind of balances this idea of erotic horror with reality television. It's a statement on reality TV. And obviously things like Big Brother and The Bachelor and that sort of thing, but it kind of takes it to a whole other level. And in a strange way, Lonely Hearts is actually a very quiet success story for us. That one, for whatever reason, it didn't really make a big splash overtly. But it seems to be a favorite. Like, I mean, people are still watching it. They're still purchasing it, even a couple of years later. So it's like, we were talking about longevity earlier in the podcast. That's definitely one that has that. Seven Sins, oddly, was the opposite. It kind of hit really nicely immediately, like right off the bat. Like that one went quite well, but the interest in that one has dwindled a little bit. So you never know with these things. I mean, when it comes to Seven Sins, I'm sure the interest will pick up again, like, as we make it available more and more and throughout the world. I'm sure there'll be more interest in that. But what we like to do, like with all these images you're seeing here and the group of images from before, what we're liking to do is also kind of contextualize these films and kind of create a story with the films together, create a little genre story with them and have it focused on independent genre filmmakers and what it is they're doing and this art that's coming from them lately, over the last few years.
Yeah, it's with your catalog too. What a huge contribution to culture in general. It's that thing that you film fans can sit there and watch and then go and connect with other people over that. I mean, that's something that's got to be absolutely lovely and really endearing.
Yeah, 100%. And that connectivity comes from many different ways. I mean, sometimes it's direct. Sometimes we get emails directly from fans, but really, it's about connecting with the social media networks that the filmmakers themselves may have, and then they're able to say, "Hey, you know what? The films are getting distribution now. Do that," and that kind of creates that own story, and it also builds up on itself as well. So, film A, distribution, and but then film B, there might be a small following already, and then they can connect in. Oh, well, what else are these guys doing? So in a way, Darkside releasing is a little bit of a bridge for filmmakers as well, so for their fans to connect with each other and realize that there are like-minded filmmakers and there are like-minded films. But the beautiful thing is every human being is different. So every filmmaker is going to approach filmmaking in a completely different manner. And so, yes, you may love Lonely Hearts and maybe you never heard of The Black Forest until this podcast. And then you're like, oh, let me check out Black Forest, completely different film. Right. But at the same time, that's the beauty of it. Like fans like us that are fans of the horror genre, yes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is your all-time favorite film, but every time you go to the video store, you don't want to re-rent Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You want to see something else too,
Yeah, so you got to see something different, and especially something something new. I think that's what keeps, art revitalized is, it's like,
Absolutely.
how are you taking, something that's been done before and, readdressing it or, reapproaching similar topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think it's remarkably endearing because
Yeah, me too. Me too.
without
There's something that is really charming and engaging with the entire process. Honestly, it even bleeds out to it goes beyond people that are only fans of the genre, or more specifically, only fans of the indie part of the genre. Like it actually, it starts to transcend that a little bit as well. But that's where it becomes really important for people like us as a distribution company, is to make sure that every film has that opportunity to transcend by making it available to everybody, not only making it available to fans of VHS tapes. You have to make it available to everybody, give everybody a chance to have a look at it, and if they find something, they discover something that that turns them on, that they hadn't seen before, then fantastic.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life.
Exactly.
Yeah. The interesting question just came through from Brad. Which title would be your white whale to put on your label?
Oh, that's
I don't know.
That is actually a tough one, and I'll tell you why that's tough is because of actually what we were just talking about, where every filmmaker has a different approach. So I could absolutely tell you which one was my favorite.
Yeah.
Will I tell you which one is my favorite? I probably won't, because I don't. The reason I wouldn't is because that I think the audience needs to make that decision. The audience ultimately needs to make the decision of what is their favorite one. Just like, you take all of the Friday the 13th movies, it's the audience that decides which one is the favorite. It is not Sean Cunningham or Steve Miner, Joseph Zito. Oh, part 4 is the best, No, it's the audience decides which one is the favorite. So I'll go with that. But what I will say is we absolutely stand behind all the releases we have for very personal reasons.
Nice.
So I'll say that.
Yeah, we're just about out of time, Vince. I think my last question would be, how would you recommend filmmakers go about seeking distribution?
Oh, well, I guess if I were to sum up something in a small piece of advice, and this isn't going to work for everybody, but I'd have to say you need to trust. Honestly, like you need to put your film out and trust that somebody else will do well. And sometimes you will get burned. Yes, sometimes you will. But sometimes the film gets burned, and it's not because of the distributor. Sometimes it just fails to connect with an audience. And because there's so many factors with distribution, I really feel that the best way to kind of approach not just distribution, but really a lot of things in life is, I think you have to automatically trust somebody. And that's a real hard thing for people to do. We did it though. We did it with the Asylum. We had no idea how they were going to treat us. And we ended up signing the second film with them as well. It's about that trust. And I think that trust can also come, you can breed trust through communication. So, I don't think it would hurt to see how much you could communicate with the company before you sign with them. But at the end of the day, there has to be some trust there. There has to be. So, and whether you agree with how a distribution company handled it after the fact, that's not for me to say. That's not for anybody to say. Everybody's going to have their own experiences. But the reason I kind of focused on that one word, that word of trust, is that I do feel that maybe sometimes people kind of shoot themselves in the foot because they're so untrusting of people, and then no, never mind, I'll just self-distribute. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's not, your job, and unless you're as a person, never mind as a filmmaker, but unless as a person you are willing to take that film you made and then spend another 2 or 3 years on the distribution part of it, then perhaps, yes, maybe you can do that. But the factor of the matter is a filmmaker, most of the time as a filmmaker, and it becomes a matter of how many hours are there in a day. And we made a decision to become a distributor, and hence I don't have time to make films anymore. So I gave that up. And if you want to do self-distribution, absolutely you can. You certainly can, but don't expect that you can do that successfully and still make a film on the side. That's not how it works. They're completely different parts of it. For instance, I mean, I know we're running out of time, but I'll give an actual example of that. When Bill Lustig got involved with the Maniac remake, Blue Underground didn't distribute anything for over a year. There's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
That's you got to make those choices. Yeah.
Right.
And if you have, you know what, if you've made a film and you don't have a funder to do a next one, and you have a year or two ahead of you that you're like, what do I occupy my time with? By all means, occupy your time with that, because people can be super successful with that as well. But it depends on what the person wants, and it depends on, honestly, like what it comes down to is how trusting you are willing to be, and how well you communicate with people. Right.
Yeah, build those relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Vince, it was fantastic talking to you and being able to connect with you on this topic and talk about, the amazing work that you guys are doing at Darkside.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, it was a real pleasure to be here. I'll be honest with you, my throat's actually sore now. You told me before we started that you were going to be the one doing most of the talking, and then I didn't even let you.
That's okay. You do most of my work for me.
Oh my God.
I appreciate it. But hang out for a few minutes. After we sign off. But
will do.
It was great to chat with you, and to my sponsors out there, Hellfire Entertainment. Thanks so much for rebroadcasting us on your social media. Our friends at Mutiny Information Cafe. If you're going to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated. and our friends at Groovy TV. Groovy passed away last year, but we carry on in his name. So
awesome.
And then also to Alien Donut Films, Bill and Angela over there. Thanks so much. They'll be out at COFOH Colorado Festival of Horror, and that's going to be September 10th through the 12th. Here in Denver. Get your tickets at COFOHhorror.com. And, hopefully next year events we'll see you out there, but you're sending us some of your films to Brad there, so we can't wait to screen them.
People will be able to see them. Yes.
Yes. Excellent. And with an audience, too, that they can, reminisce about.
That's important to note, actually. Yes. Yeah, that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, we can't wait. So, and then also to my producers, Stefan Santa Cruz and Amanda Armstrong, thanks so much for your help. And to everybody that tuned in, thanks so much, guys. Be good, be kind, help each other out during these tough times. And always remember that we love you. So take care and have a good night.
Thank you.